Well, originally, as you know, from Brazil won, bastards. Originally from England, uh, been in the States for the last 25 years, and in 2008, I was director of a very large mortgage company. So I had 500 people under me, and the mortgage industry collapsed overnight, and I was left as homeless. And I'd never really looked at my own credit because I was earning so much money. It never really mattered to me because I've mostly paid cash for stuff. But I started to learn.
I still have my notes from the last time you were on
Oh,
about
wow,
your
look at
credit
that.
score and what it
Oh,
picks
good
up.
job.
Oh yeah.
Good job.
Oh
Good
yeah.
job there. So anyway, I started to learn credit repair, and obviously it got me out of a bind. And then I decided that I was going to open a company using the same principles that I use to improve my own credit. So we're not just a credit repair company. We're educators. We work with our clients. We talk to them about what they should and shouldn't do to up their credit score, et cetera, et cetera. So it's more an improvement on lifestyle, if you like, than anything else. That's basically it.
Yeah. No, and I think it's important, and it's an avenue that as of recent I've kind of changed my thinking. I've always been, I don't know why people don't talk about this, and this is something that's super important, and I'm blown away that people don't care about this kind of stuff. But I've kind of sat with it, and I was just listening to a podcast where they talk about when you talk to your children, you always talk to them like a level or two above where their actual knowledge level is.
Interesting.
So that you can push them up to the next level.
Got you.
And it's something we do unconsciously. You assume that the kid's going to know it, and you assume the kid's going to catch on to the next thing. And I kept thinking, like, maybe there's something to adults. Like, we shouldn't talk to adults that way. Like, maybe they've already lost so many years growing up that now as an adult, you talk to them about life insurance and credit repair and all this stuff that they haven't talked about. And they're like, I don't know. And then it's an uncomfortable thing because you shouldn't talk to another adult about something they don't know, because then it's kind of vulnerable.
Right. Well, just off the record, we probably won't be talking about this, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's fine.
But a lot of my criticism comes to education boards and specifically teachers. So I'll tell you a quick story. So this will show you where my issues are. Where I have at the time, I have a stepson who at the time was 11 years old. So I'm going back about 5-6 years ago. Okay. So he comes home from school one day and he's in tears. He's inconsolable. He's crying his eyes out, little kid, cute little kid, and he's crying and crying. So I said to him, hey, Nicky, what's wrong? Is somebody bullying you? Has a teacher shouted at you? Why are you so upset? And this is what he said. Donald Trump won the election. That's what he said.
Really?
And it took me about 10 minutes before I put my coat on and headed straight to his school. So this is not to illustrate my particular politics, but it's funny to me that teachers get involved in stuff that they shouldn't be involved in, and stuff that they should be involved in, they're absolutely not. Yeah. So to give you an example, I went to Parents' Day for Nicky a few months later, and there on the wall, their teachers, I think he's a math teacher, if I remember correctly, he had them do a project on why banks are so good. Now, you would think that would be a good topic, except I totally disagree. I think banks are fucking shit and they take advantage of people, but people don't understand. And when I say people, I mean, the one problem that everybody has when they talk about finances, they don't understand numbers. They might understand principles, but they don't understand numbers. So here's a number to get your head around. So if you put money in a bank account, not all bank accounts pay interest, but the major ones tend to pay you like 1%, which is, by the way, after tax is, who knows, like 0.7 or something ridiculous. Okay. What's hidden from the general populace is that cash is losing money by 1.6% per month. So in other words, your spending power, if you went out and spent $20 right now,
Yep.
you'd get 1.6% less value for your money than you would last month.
Yep.
So think about that for a minute. The banks give you 1%, and yet you're losing 1.6%. What does that tell you?
And is that 1% annual or 1% month that they're giving you?
And that's it, 1% annual, simple
So you
interest.
get 1% annual, but you lose 1.6% monthly.
Per month. Now,
Right.
here's another thing. Not to confuse matters, but there's a difference between simple interest and compound interest.
Huge interest. Or huge
Right.
difference.
Huge difference. So simple interest is that 1% we're just talking about that the banks, and not all banks offer it, by the way, but most of them do, the major ones. So the 1% that they give you is simple interest. Now, if you take a credit card out from the bank, do you think that you have to pay that credit card off in simple interest or compound interest?
Oh, that is
It's compound
interest.
Right. So again, it's like people have sheeple. They do what the generations have done through the previous years because of a lack of education and foresight. Instead of sitting down and going, hold on a minute, these numbers don't work for me. How can this be going on? But it is, and it's going on a huge scale. So things like that, when I say, educating your kids, it's a little bit more than just saying, hey, open a bank account. Try and explain to them what interest actually is. What's the difference between simple interest, compound interest?
Yeah.
Why if you have to pay something is compound interest bad, and yet you get simple interest? And,
Yeah.
and it amazes me the amount of credit cards that are offered to people with 2% cash back, 3% cash back. And people think this is great.
Yeah.
How can you think that's great when you're paying 18.99% APR and you're getting, a couple of cents back in your bank account? These are the things that should be explained to kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In a fun way. Because I know, and it's funny you talk about your parents, because if you remember, last time I was on, I told you about, you probably don't remember this, but I have a nephew. My mother's a twin.
This is the story. This is it. I like this one. I like this one.
Mother's a twin. The only difference between them is probably about $1.8 billion, something like that. And her kids, when they were young, they sat at the dinner table and they talked about interest rates and credit cards and how the banks work. And when we were young, as I said, we'd either talk about stupid things like what's on the television or my favorite football team or something like that. But it didn't take me to the next level.
Yeah.
Which shows me, not everybody, but if you have wealth in your family, those people are far more likely to help their kids understand the value of money and how to use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk about credit for a second. So people, I hear this all the time. You'd be amazed. Oh, I don't need credit. I don't use credit. I pay for everything cash. Well, in that case, you're an idiot because you won't qualify for a mortgage unless you've got 500,000 sitting in your bank account, or even a car unless you've got 30, 40 grand sat in your bank account. And even then, you're going to have to pay for things in full. No one's going to offer you credit because...
And still at that, if you've got $500,000 in your bank account, we just talked about the simple interest where you're only earning 1% annually and you're losing 1.6. You'd be better off putting that into a vehicle, either a IUL or something that's going to get some compounding interest.
There you go.
That would be a better use of that money. So I like having no cash on hand because that means my money's out doing stuff.
That's smart. That's very smart.
Sorry to interrupt, but you can keep going.
No, you're right. You're right. But these are the major points I think that we can discuss and talk about. But just to give you a heads up, I'm very relentless on the education system and on teachers. I just think they do a really poor job.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you.
On the agent side, even talking about the difference between a local bank and a credit union.
Right.
Like those two are different. They're two different things.
Of course they are.
But everybody looks at the brick building and they're like, that's a bank. And I'm like, nope, that's a credit union. They're different things.
They are, but the thing is, the rule in our economy is he who spends the most money to make themselves visible is going to get the most business.
Mm-hmm.
So occasionally you'll see a credit union advertising their services, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
How often do you see Chase, Wells Fargo, all the big guys? They're always on the television,
Yep.
or they're sponsoring Super Bowls or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're in an easy society. People want to take the easy way out on everything.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, Marcus, about credit unions and simple interest, but you know what? Chase is just around the corner. I'm just going to go there, man.
Yeah.
That's the sort of society we're in. I mean, think about the internet. Okay, if I went on the internet 20 years ago or 25 years ago, I'd have AOL. You know, you'd have the ping,
Yeah.
and you have to wait. Okay, now if you get on the internet and it takes you less than a nanosecond to connect,
It's in your
you're
pocket now.
cursing. Yeah, you're cursing. You're really annoyed because we live in a simple throwaway society where we want to do the quick and fast thing, not necessarily the best thing, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, these are subjects that we can cover if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know that I mentioned the IUL. I was going to ask you about those type of things, other ways for I know we're going to stick towards kids education.
Right.
And I know that I started my son with an IUL when he was, I think, 3.5 was when you could start one.
Okay.
So he's already been starting that route. But if you are, I mean, you're a parent with the
Yep.
stepchild, and what would you give or where would you start? Because some parents haven't begun to talk about finances with their kids. Is there one thing where you'd start a
I
conversation?
wouldn't start with IUL because, well, it's very tricky because to explain IUL to a kid, it is just going to probably
Oh,
lose them,
I
you
haven't
know.
gotten there. I have not
Right,
gotten there.
exactly.
I don't know how
So
to yet.
it's great that you're investing on his behalf, but really, you know what they say, you can take someone to the, you can take someone to the water and show them how to fish, or you can teach them how to fish, and then they'll live a lot longer.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with finances. You can, do something for them, and that's very nice, or you can sit down and explain exactly what you're doing and what the benefits are, so that they begin to understand it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And
But
I think he needs a couple more years of math under his belt because we're doing
yeah.
addition subtraction right now.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, he's. Do you say he was 8 years old?
Yep, he's gonna be 8.
Okay, so at 8, you've got basic fundamental knowledge of
Mm-hmm.
math, should we say? You're probably, the optimum age to me is probably about 11 or 12. So you're probably like 2 or 3 years away. I mean, you can still introduce things to him gently,
Yeah.
but rather than sitting down for half an hour and explain IULs, it'll just be lost on him. So my belief is if you're going to, and it may be different to yours, if I'm going to invest in something for my kids, I want to explain to them what it is and why I chose that particular vehicle to put money in and what they can expect as a result of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I'll show them, as I said, like a bank account, and I'll show them interest, and we'll work out interest together, and I'll go, see, you put $100 in the bank, you're lucky if you actually get $1 back. So think about that for a while. That's not very much. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
So now you want to start thinking out what are other areas that you can potentially invest. I have clients, and I'm not kidding you. I have clients that it's 1-1, by the way. Croatia have just scored. I have clients, and I'm not kidding you, that their kids at 11 or 12 have actually started their own business.
That's awesome.
Now, when I say business, don't think big capitalism. It might be a lemonade stand or a shoe shine stand. It doesn't matter because same as you're doing with your son, you're teaching them the value of money. You provide a service, you make a return, if that makes sense.
Yep.
The problem with kids today, and everybody's different, Marcus, so I'm not aiming this at you, but the problem is they're not like the kids that we were. They have higher expectations to receive a lot of things for doing nothing.
Yeah.
You know, they're a spoiled generation. This is between you and I, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody says, "Oh, my kid's the best. My kid's the best." Okay, so what does your kid do all day? Well, he goes to school, then he comes home, he goes in his bedroom, he plays computer games, comes down for dinner, goes back into his bedroom, goes to sleep, and then goes to school the next day. That's great. But two questions: what are they learning? And where's your interaction with your kids?
Yeah.
Because if you don't interact with your kids, who are they going to interact with? Other 8-year-olds? Well, have you ever had life experience from an 8-year-old? You understand where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So to me, the fault is really that the education system needs to take a second look at what it does. But parents also want to get more involved in their kids.
Yeah.
And I know, listen, if my kid is playing Call of Duty and I call him down to talk about APRs on credit cards, for the first 5-10 minutes, he's going to hate me like
Yeah.
like you wouldn't believe. But if you make it fun and you make it enjoyable and you make it's not just you lecturing to your kid, it's
Yeah.
asking questions and letting them talk and letting them say, you know, wow, that's a good idea, Dad, or no, I don't like that. So, in other words, and my wife taught me this, by the way, the greatest thing any kid can ever have is acknowledgement from a parent. That's the greatest gift. Wow, you're smart, son, or great job, daughter. That sort of enthusiasm can push them way beyond anything else. And I'm not a parental expert, believe me. I screw up a lot myself, but you know, if they come up with an idea, even if it's not the best idea in the world, wow, that's a really good idea. Let's talk about that. You know, why did you think that? I want to hear your opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because think about it. A kid sits at a dinner table and usually they're fairly quiet. And most of the conversation is between the adults. So they're more like a passenger or a witness to a conversation. They don't really feel part of it. They'll listen and, you know, they might tell their friends, oh, mum and dad argued at dinner over something, you know, but
Yeah.
they don't feel an important part of the process, the learning process.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to approach it in a very, and again, I'm talking to you, you're a good father, I can tell that, but you have to approach it
Right.
from a from a gentle perspective of, well, what's your opinion? Because it's really important. I want to hear what you think.
Yeah.
You know, that gives some credibility if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's tough. And especially with my son, this week he's the star of the week because his birthday is next week. And he had to bring
oh,
something in for show and tell. And he's like, what do you think I should bring? And as much as I wanted to like, oh, you should bring this because we always
right,
no,
right.
I'm not the star. You're this. You have to pick.
There you go.
Like I can't help you with this, bud. You are the star.
Right.
You get to own it. You get to do it. But he wanted me there, so I was like, I'll help you, follow you around to like interject. But
That's
like at the
great.
end of the day, you have to make your decision because you're the one that has to go in front of the class and talk about it.
Yeah, no, you're
And
absolutely correct. That's a great way of doing it.
it was a tough thing for me to sit back because I mean, with me and him at home, like if he plays Lego, he asks me to play. And if he plays video games, he asks me to play. So I always
Right,
play with him. But in the times where it's like he gets to go, he's like, all right, let's go. And I'm like, no, 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 this is just you. And that's
right.
it. It's a weird dynamic.
See, it's funny you say that because I do not play computer games at all, which in one way is frustrating to my kids because I think they'd like me to. But on the other hand, they know that there are certain subjects they can broach me about and talk to me about, and some they can't. So
Yeah.
I don't care what you did in Call of Duty, but I do care how you did with your homework, you know,
Right.
how you're doing in class. Are there any subjects you're struggling with? So these are things that I want to get involved in. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be known as the parent who's the best at Call of Duty. You know,
Yeah.
who gives a crap about that? You know, but
Well,
I
I
do
can
want
I
to.
can say I will not be that parent. I'm terrible.
Right.
My son is so much better than I am. I am
They all
awful.
are.
I'm
They all
awful.
are. They all are. But the problem is what we've produced is a bedroom community. Think about it. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Most kids under the age of 15, 16, if you ask where they are, the answer is usually in the bedroom playing games,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Now, I don't think, and I'm not a gaming expert, but I don't think that that can broaden their knowledge or expertise or even life skills, apart from how to shoot someone on a computer. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But
I do try to draw comparisons because, like, I know kids will have fun, and their fun is way different than my fun. When I was a kid, I was out at the church lawn hitting golf balls and
right,
in the driveway home run derbies and kick the can and like running around the neighborhood. Like
hold
that's
on,
what
you, whoa, 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 whoa! You actually went
I
outside?
did. I braved the outside and I made it to 32. I was okay. I know it's
Because
like
kids
against
don't know
common
what
belief, but you
I
are
know.
safe outside.
Kids don't know what outside is. Every time we're in California, the weather here is spectacular most of the time.
Yeah.
And I'll say to the kids, hey, come on, let's go to the beach. Let's hang out. Let's play a bit of soccer. No, Dad, it's okay. I'm busy. I'll catch up with you later.
Yeah. I mean,
You
there's a
know.
couple days here and there where our internet just goes out for some reason, and I can't figure it out. I don't. Beats me.
I
Gotta
bet
do
that's
something else.
miserable. I bet that's miserable
It
for
does
you.
happen, but even when, like, I know his fun is video games, and he likes Legos. He likes building. We've built like this big motorized Ferris wheel and amusement park type thing. So he
Cool.
does do some off technology learning, which is great. But I know he likes technology. So the problem solving aspect, the okay, I went in, I was playing this round and I got shot or got killed, whatever. Are you going to go do the same thing over again? Or are you going to try a different way?
Right.
Like those are the same things when you do your homework. If you get it wrong, are you going to do the same thing over again? Or are you going to try something different? Just like in video games or when you're out playing basketball and you're with your team and you get the
Right.
ball stolen, are you going to dribble down the same way? Or are you going to do something different? So trying to pull those
That's
things
awesome.
out of it, they may be fewer with video games, but a little bit of problem solving, some perseverance. Obviously, it's frustrating as people break controllers and yell at TVs. So there's
Right.
some emotional control. You try to pull it out where you can, but I don't think I'll ever be able to stop them from playing video games. So I just try to
No,
like,
you're probably right. Make the best of it. I get
make
it.
the best of
But
it. Exactly.
but the thing is, if you take that concept a step further, okay, what we were just talking about now, this is how I would approach it. First of all, I'm sure you'll agree with me. There are kids out there, 17, 18, 19, that have started online companies and are doing very well for themselves.
Yeah.
So I would kind of use that hook, and I would say to my son, okay, what let's talk about maybe you doing something on the internet. What are you passionate about? Well, I'm really passionate about Legos. Okay, why don't you create a YouTube channel where you show people how you make big buildings using Lego?
Mm-hmm.
And see, now if you do that and enough people watch it, you'll begin to make money from YouTube.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about how to get likes, we'll talk about how to put a video together. Then you're taking them from someone who just plays Call of Duty to someone who's now thinking about, how can I earn money from this?
Yeah.
How do I get those likes? Are there any shortcuts? How do I do it? Why are other people getting likes and I'm not? I know I hate the word likes because that's the generation that we're in.
Yeah.
But you're teaching them about business. Now, if he turns around and says, well, Dad, I'd love to do that, but if I really want to be very good, I need blah, blah, blah camera, and I need blah, 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 and I need blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, why don't you go on the internet and find out how much those things actually cost if you want to buy them? Go on Amazon, have a look round. They'll come back to you. Well, Dad, it's going to cost me like $2,000 for all this equipment. That's a lot of money. I haven't got $2,000. So my next question to you, son, is how are you going to earn that $2,000? Do you understand about credit? So there are places you can go that will lend you the money,
Yeah.
but you have to pay them back with interest. Do you think it's worth it? Have you worked out how many viewers you can expect and what sort of money you can expect? These are things that you're treating them like an adult, but you're doing it in very simple steps.
Yeah.
Because kids, the great thing about kids is they learn a lot better by themselves than they do from us. So
Yeah.
we can talk about things, but they need to reinforce it. Oh, Dad, I just looked on the internet and you're right. You're absolutely right. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So slowly but surely, from a hobby or a love that they've got, you can turn that into an economic education for them so they begin to understand how things work.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually funny that you brought that topic up, because I think I read that the number one career choice of that generation is an influencer, an
Yeah.
online influencer.
There you go.
That was it. I remember as a kid, we were like firefighter, police officer. Influencer was not on my list.
No, mine neither. But here's the thing, and I know this is going to sound strange, but sometimes it's actually good for them to fail. And I know that's a weird thing to say, especially if there's not too much money on the line, because lessons can be learned, valuable lessons can be learned from failure.
Yeah.
So as they grow older, they'll remember the partial failure or the failure that they had, just like you're teaching your son.
Yeah.
And then they'll work around, oh, I remember when I did this and I lost this and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to try a different way moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But
I will fully let my son fail. It will be in a very it's not he's not on pins and needles. Like if he fails, he falls into this bucket of nails. But if he's doing his math homework, and I'm watching this unfold and he's got the wrong numbers going on and he's still going and he's pumping, he's feeling good. I got it. And at the end, he's like, that was wrong. And I was like, yep, that was wrong. Right. He's like, oh, and I'm like, okay, but we were close. Let's try again. And by the end, he'll figure out where he went wrong. And then that mistake is gone. Right. I don't need to watch that mistake again because he's so mad that he had to erase all of his work that he's going to make sure he doesn't do that again. And I feel like
that is awesome.
That's a quicker way to fix it than me standing over his shoulder being like, nope, don't write a 5. It's a 4.
Right, yeah.
But why is it a 5? Or why is it a 4, not a 5? Let him figure out why it's a 4.
No, that's awesome. It really is awesome. But I think what you have to do...
I do have a lot of gray hair, though.
I have no hair, so don't worry about it. But I think that, and again, I'm not a parental expert, so what I would say is that the more credit you give them, or a strange word, more maturity level you give them, the better it is for them. Mm-hmm. So if this is just a lecture of you sitting down saying, no, you should do this, you should do this, they're not going to learn anything. They're just pissed that they didn't get the right thing, and now dad's helping them out. Mm-hmm. And kids like independence. But the second thing that you're teaching them is responsibility, which is hugely important, because I worry for the general workforce when your son grows up and becomes 16, 19, whatever age, if he goes to university. But I worry about it. I worry that, do they understand the discipline of having to go to work, of having to arrive at a certain time, having to report to someone that maybe they don't like or doesn't like them, doing jobs that they don't particularly like, but they've got to pay the rent or they've got to eat or whatever. These are all valuable lessons that I worry that the kids of today are going to go through, because, as you just said, they all want to be influencers, which is great, but logically, they can't all be influencers.
Right. So someone's not going to get their goal.
Right. And think about it this way, that the idea of being an influencer is very, very appealing, because you're working from home.
Yeah.
You're not reporting to anyone, and most of the time you're having fun.
Yeah.
That's great. But if it doesn't work, what are the options ahead of you? Yeah. Are you ready for the workforce? Do you understand how a wage slip actually works? Are you going to go self-employed, or are you going to go W-2? These are all important decisions that kids are holding off on because they love being in the bedroom playing Call of Duty. Back to what I'm saying. And I know I sound very critical, but trust me, all my friends, their kids, exactly the same. No difference.
I don't think it's critical.
Bedroom
it's
kids.
Honest. I mean, it is.
What
we're seeing. I mean, you can't really be too critical on it. You're just being honest of what the patterns are. Those are the patterns.
Right.
Did you see that video? It was I think it was on YouTube, or I think I saw it on like Instagram or something. It was a worker at Starbucks who was calling for a Starbucks union because they
Oh, I
were,
saw that. Yeah, I
oh
saw
my
that. I
God.
saw that.
Oh,
I
and I
gotta
don't want to
admit,
make fun of the kid. I mean, he's
yeah,
out there, he's working, but man, there's got to be some grit there.
I know, but I got news for you. I hate Starbucks as a company. I really do. I think the fact that you're paying
You
$5 for
better
a
put a
cup of
sticker over
coffee.
that coffee mug.
Yeah, I should. You're right. It's a Starbucks
Oh
coffee mug. You're
no.
right. You know, I get it. I get it. But I don't know if I want to teach my kid about unions and the benefit of joining a union or whatever, or a closed shop union. I don't think that's a subject that I want to broach because I think there are more important things for them to learn to start off with.
Yeah.
And also, you know, your kids, you're not going to be able to hold their hand every day of their life.
Yeah.
They're gonna screw up, just
Yeah.
like you screwed up and I screwed up.
Yeah.
You know, some things we don't tell mum and dad, and some things we do, and we're looking for help. I get it,
Yeah.
but to me, you know, my kids, I don't. And again, this isn't a political thing, but I don't. Wow, Croatia just won. Ah!
Really?
One, I knew they'd beat Brazil. Okay, so
Wow.
the thing is this: I don't want my kids to know or to learn about the 16 other sexes that exist that they can decide to become.
Yeah.
I don't want them to know that. If they want to know, they'll find out themselves. But I do want them to get some sort of financial education. I do want to get them prepared for life ahead. Now, this could be a California thing. I don't know if it applies to you, but back to my son again. So every day of the week, they have to do gym in California. Is it the same where you are?
Um, well, my son's in grade school. They don't have gym every day. They have it
Okay.
twice a week. But I
Yeah. Well,
remember as a kid, I had gym every day.
right. Okay. So I like sport, yeah, obviously. So when my kid comes home, I always say, "Hey, what did you do in gym today?" Oh, nothing really. The teacher was like sat at the back having a coffee, and we were throwing basketballs to each other, or we got some hockey sticks out and played with that. It's a waste of frigging time. So why are you not using those 40 minutes instead of teaching kids to run a 20-minute mile or whatever?
Hmm.
Sit them down and explain how banks work, how credit cards work, how credit works. That's got to be more valuable. I don't care if my kid can't run a 15-minute mile. I don't care. There
Yeah.
are more important, that's unless he's going to become an Olympic athlete. Yeah, who cares? But I do care that he knows how to open a bank account, how to open a savings account, how to go to a credit union, and what benefits the credit union has that the banks don't. You
Yeah.
know, if he wants to start a business, how does he raise collateral for that business? And you don't need to think big, you can think very small. Okay, he wants to start doing the Legos and he wants to make videos, and he hasn't got any credit yet. Where's he going to get money from to start the bank, to start the company? Well, I could speak to Uncle Billy, maybe he can give me some money, and blah blah blah. You're teaching them to be resourceful,
Yeah.
financially resourceful, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And that to me is of greater value. And as I said, I love sport, believe me, and I know you do too. But it's a greater value to them growing up, if that
And
makes sense to you.
that's the hard part about gym being less and less is because I learned a lot of that resourcefulness. I didn't pay attention in school.
Right.
If I didn't know an answer, I just didn't know an answer, and that's fine. But if
Yeah.
I was on the field or on the court and I didn't know an answer, I'm figuring that out.
Right.
I don't know how I'm figuring it out. And
Right.
if I didn't have that outlet of sports, I might not have learned that skill. I don't know.
And that's right.
And
And
that's where
that's
it's like every kid is different. Every kid has something
true.
passionate. In where they're passionate at is where they're going to learn that skill.
True. That's
And
true.
that's where it's like, yeah, I don't want him to play video games all day. And he does not play video games all day. but when he does, I know he's in it. I don't
Right.
have to be like, hey, bud, come on here. We're playing video
Right.
games. Focus. Focus. He's got that. He's focused.
Right.
It's hard to pull him away. So that stuff, it's like, hey, bud, when you're playing video games, you are focused. I need that same focus here during math. I know you don't like math and you like video games. I get that. But you can focus. You're just choosing not to focus right now. And that's the difference. And I make that known every time. You're choosing not to. You're choosing not to because you can. I know you can.
Right.
But how to pull that out of what they enjoy and inject it into something they don't? Is that like a
Right.
maturity thing? Is that something learned? I don't, and that's the
Well,
part that I'm unsure of right now.
it's what I would call personally the pickleball conundrum. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I most of my life have played tennis, I played squash, I played badminton, love all those sports. If anybody wanted to play any of those, I'd be up in a minute.
Yeah.
And about 6 months ago, a friend of mine said, "Have you tried pickleball?" So I said, "What the hell is pickleball?" I don't know if you know what pickleball
That was
is. It's
just
like
on
a
ESPN like
Oh,
2 weeks
really?
ago.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
It's a very skillful game,
It
actually. So
is.
here's the thing. So my buddy said, "Look, I belong to a pickleball club. Come along and play a couple of games and see what you think about it."
I
And
always
that's
I always like explain it as imagine you're playing ping pong, doubles ping pong, but you're standing on the table.
right. You're
It's
right.
like a super fast game, but
Right.
you're on it's really cool.
Right.
It is
So
awesome.
the thing is, I played a couple of games and really loved it. And now I probably play pickleball more than anything else. So
Mhm.
it's exactly what you were saying, but taking it back to that is that you don't know what your kid can get emotionally involved in if they've never learned it.
Yeah.
So if you talk, I know it's ridiculous, and I keep talking about starting your own company. Kids don't necessarily have to do that, but you could start a company with a friend of yours
Hmm.
or three of you together, you know. So you're getting the brain thinking in a certain way. Does that
Yeah.
make sense to you?
Yep.
And the thing about credit that people don't understand is people say to me, well, why? Why should I have good credit? What does good credit get you that bad credit doesn't? And the answer is simple: freedom.
Hmm.
That's what it gets you. Good credit means you can walk into a car dealership, lease a car, and you don't have to put anything down. And you still get maybe the 0% APR for the first 12 months or whatever. When you go buy a house, you get the best rates. So everything in life looks different when your credit is good as opposed to when your credit is bad and you don't have any options. So these are things I want to teach my kids. I want to sit down and, just like you've got the piece of paper, explain to them how a credit score actually works. How is it made up?
Yeah.
Why are there three credit bureaus? Why isn't there just one credit bureau? Why do you see three different scores on three different bureaus? These are things that you may think they don't take in, but you'd be surprised. They may take it in, never have to use it for like 5 or 6 years, but still remember the lesson that dad gave them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Does that make
Yeah.
sense to you?
Yeah. And
And
and the credit score it's big, and I know that there's some people out there, some notion that the credit score is like unfair or I'm screwed because I don't have a good one, so it's bad. Like it's
right,
if you had $5,000 and three
right,
people came to you and said, "Hey, I need a loan for $5,000," and you're like, I only have five. I'm going to give it to one of you. And one person is paid back everybody, the other person is paid back half, and the last person's paid back nobody. Who are you giving the
of
five
course,
thousand to?
of
It's
course,
it's
of
the
course,
same thing. Like you just have to
of course.
start like being financially more responsible, and more
Right.
people will trust you with their money. That's
But
all
on
I'm
the
saying.
but on the flip side of that, what you probably don't know is that first of all, 80%, that's 80, of all credit reports are incorrect.
I've learned that through like
80%.
the credit repair system.
Right. Okay. So as you know, that's the first thing we attack. So
Yeah.
the
And what
thing
are
is,
some common things for the audience who don't know? What are some common errors that cause your credit score to go down?
well, it could be like you have a late payment. There are some surprising things that make your credit go down. Sometimes, and I have to teach this to all my clients, say that you have a $10,000 Visa bill that you've not paid, or you're struggling to pay.
Mhm.
So you call them up and you say, hey guys, let me give you 5,000 and let's just close the account. Okay. If that's not done correctly, that can be a huge negative on your credit, because what happens is the creditor will not remove that from your credit report, but they'll say paid for less than the full outstanding balance,
Yep.
which is a negative connotation. There are hundreds of these things. So again, what we do is we use the Fair Credit Reporting Act as a basis, and we challenge the bureaus to get rid of the negative items that are incorrectly reporting. Also, and this is interesting because we talked about this a few minutes ago, I don't know if you've ever looked at your credit report, but it's very common that you can have 3 different scores on 3 bureaus. That's because the way that they calculate the scores slightly differs from bureau to bureau. But even worse is when you see one item, like say Visa, reported on all 3 bureaus, and there's a different balance on each one and different payment on each one. They're all different. If that's the case, all 3 should be deleted because they have to be standardized. So there are certain things that you've got to know about how to fix credit, you know, in order to get to the higher category. But I don't know if I'd want to sit with my kid and go through credit repair. You know, I think I'd want to teach them, probably in everything I do, the overview of things rather than going to the minutia. And if they're interested, they'll ask me, like, Dad, why is a credit union better than a bank? What's so great about credit unions? Why do you never see them on the television? You know, so these are things that are important.
Yeah.
But to me, a financial education has to be part of the syllabus of kids in school. I would say from the age of like 11 onwards.
Yeah.
I think it should be mandatory. I mean, being serious, unless you're going to become sort of biochemist, what the hell benefit are you going to get from learning chemistry? Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned chemistry for 5 years. I hated it. I've never used it from the day I left school, you know. So I think we have to be more general in the education that we offer our kids. And certain countries, for instance, some of the communist countries, like China, they do teach their kids the basis of financial education. They do. They think it's really, really important. I just don't know why we don't.
There was a stat that China has more people entering the engineering program than we have graduating
I can
at
believe
each grade. So
I
they
can
have more
believe
people entering into engineering than we have graduating total. The scales have tipped into where our priorities are. And that's where I
No,
just like my son may not grow up to be a financial guru, but he had a
right.
wallet when he was 3, and if he wanted to go buy something from the store, he took his wallet and he paid for it, and he's
There you
starting
go.
to learn.
There you
So
go.
he'll get somewhere
Right.
further.
Well, also he'll realize things like bargaining power, the ability to buy en masse as opposed to buying an individual product, and how much cheaper it can be. These are things that, you know, we don't teach our kids. We don't, you know, just the kid will say, okay, Dad, let's go to Costco because it's cheaper there, because they heard Mum and Dad say that. But they don't know why.
Yeah.
They don't know about bulk purchases, you know, being cheaper than a single unit. So I think that, excuse me, kids have a desire for knowledge. And the way that you treat that desire is very important. If you just ignore it, it'll go away. If you sit down and talk to them, and you know, I have a friend of mine, and he has a boat. He has a fishing boat, and he taught his kid to fish. Okay, his kid is like 14 now. And I remember from the age of about 8 or 9, he'd take him out on this boat, and they'd be on the boat for like 4 or 5 hours. And part of that was talking about finances. And the kid loved it because he loved fishing. He loved being with his dad. It was like a real bonding moment
Yeah.
where his dad was focused on him, and he learned a lot. He's now in university, by the way, and he's a very, very smart kid, but he
Nice.
has a good financial understanding. And the thing is that most of us, let's talk about being a parent for a second. It's frigging tough being a parent.
Oh
You
yeah.
go to work, you may have a very difficult job that's very pressurized. You come home, your kids are screaming, you just want some peace and quiet, you want to sit on the chair and everybody goes away for an hour. I get it. All parents go through the same thing. I get it. But it's prioritizing your child's future, and by the way, it also de-stresses you, because teaching is a wonderful thing, by the way. You feel a
Yes.
lot better. You feel better for it. Yeah.
And I will say, I have learned a lot of things by even just explaining it to
Right.
him. All right, I have
Right.
to think about this concept and I have to explain it to a 7-year-old.
Right.
How? But
Right.
then it'll click and I'm like, oh, it's that simple. And then I can apply that simple logic to like the life where I'm going.
Right.
Then I'm like, oh, that makes more sense for me. Because I just got to boil it down to its basic level.
Well,
Which,
and you're right, but again, kids are slightly different to when we were younger, because if you look at incidents like, for instance, 9/11, okay, which was a terrible, terrible
mhm,
tragedy. It was on the news, it was on the internet, everywhere you looked, everything was 9/11. So the chances are that your kids saw that. And then they begin to ask difficult questions.
yeah,
When we were kids, we didn't know anything about the tragedies that went on in the world. We didn't put our parents in a tough position by asking them questions that they may not know the answers to.
yeah,
But nowadays, the access to information is 1,000 times bigger than when we were kids.
yes,
But the question is, what information do you actually want them to get, and what information will benefit them, and what information will give them nightmares and not be able to sleep for a long time,
yeah,
looking around the corner for Al Qaeda. So I'm not saying ignore the big things that happen, but the emphasis should be more on their personal growth and development, if
yeah,
that makes sense to you.
yeah.
It's a tough task being a parent. It's the hardest job in the world,
It is.
because if you think about it, you're a mentor to that little person who then becomes a slightly bigger person, an even bigger person, but you're always going to be that person's mentor. That's a lot of responsibility if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yep.
I mean, I know, personally speaking, my dad was not a mentor to me. I hardly saw him. He was always out working, and he passed away fairly young. But I mean, I miss him as a dad, but the things I've learned, I didn't learn from my parents. I learned from making mistakes, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important. That's like the cleanest way to learn. I mean, obviously, failing may not be clean or seem clean, but once you clean it all up and you get back on the horse, it's a very
Right.
good way to learn. It's a very efficient way to learn.
Right. You're right. And it's also important, by the way, that your spouse or your partner is on a similar page to you.
Yeah.
That's also important.
Yeah.
Because if you're not around, and your son or daughter asks your other half questions, there's got to be some standardization between the two, and you've got to let her know or him know or whatever exactly what you're doing and what the end goal is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because kids are very smart, and if they see a gap between mummy and daddy, they'll exploit it.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I'm sure that's what you
I
did.
mean, that was the
That's what the
whole,
kids
that's like
right.
can I go to my friend's house? And dad says no.
Yeah,
So he runs to mom. And he's like, can I go to my
there you
friend's
go.
house? She's like,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, there you go.
So if you don't
That's
have the
exactly
same
it.
message, there's going to be turmoil in that one.
But let me ask you a question about dinner time. So typically you have dinner time, and do you have one child or do you have more than
Just
one?
one.
Just one. Okay.
Yep.
So what do you do at dinner time with your kid? What's your son's name, by the way? So
Miles.
Miles. Great,
Hmm.
great name. Okay. So what do you do with Miles come dinner time? Do you discuss general things or
We just sit at the table and talk and eat. No
right?
TV. We might put on some music. But
Right,
yeah,
that's good.
there's no TV on, there's no
No
homework being
phones.
done, just
No
eating.
phones. No
No.
phones.
I
Great. That's good.
sometimes do, and I'm the culprit.
Uh,
I'm the bad guy. And he's been a couple times, he's been like, Dad, no phones. You're right. I'm sorry.
so, again, I'm not telling you what to do because everybody's different. But using the Lego analogy, I would open up dinner by saying, okay, just say you had so much money that you didn't know what to do with it, and you wanted to buy Legos with it. What would you build with the Legos? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, that sounds good. Okay. So let's talk about how you could possibly do that. Where are you going to get the money from? How does it work? Have you got any money in a bank? Do you know how banks work? Have you got a credit card? What's a credit card, Dad? And then you explain it. Well, these nice people at the bank are going to give you money and then charge you an exorbitant rate to pay back the money that they gave you. And by the way, you only get to get lots of money from the bank if you have good credit. And if you have good credit, you probably don't need the money from the bank in the first place.
Yep.
So you can see what a weird world we live in.
Yeah.
But kids don't know anything about this. They don't know how to navigate it. And because it's not in their periphery, they're not even thinking about it
Yeah.
until it's too late.
I didn't really understand the concept of fractional lending from banks until about I don't want to 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, is like
Right.
the first kind of concept I got of really how it worked. And I don't know everything
Right.
about it, but the
Are
concept
you,
of it.
are you
So
talking about arbitrage as well?
no. So
Okay.
maybe you have to explain that one to me. But just the concept of fractional banking, because we went into the bank and I was going to open up the bank account with my son, and they said, no, he's 7 years old, can't do it. But when we were there, they had the vault door open. And he's like, Dad, that's where all the bank or that's where all the money is.
Yeah.
And I was like, no.
No.
And
Yeah.
he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, the banks lend out the money. They barely have any money here. It's all
Right.
lent out to people, and they're
Right.
using it to build houses like I do
Yeah.
and
That's
all that.
arbitrage.
So in there is probably like valuable things, like they keep valuable rings or gold maybe. And he was like, "What about this?" And we just made up things that they could lock in the
Sure.
safe and that kind of
I
stuff.
got you.
But
I got you.
the whole concept of the bank not holding all of the money they lend, growing up, I thought that's how it was.
Mm. Well, here's the thing with that, and you're absolutely right. You're 100% correct. So, let's go back in history. So, in 1931, the stock market had just collapsed. We were in the middle of Hooverville. Things were very bad for this country. And there was a huge run on the banks. I don't know if you know this. People were lining up outside to get all their money out of the bank. And obviously, as you said, the banks didn't have the money. Even in 1930s, they were doing
Is
arbitrage.
that what they were talking about with the movie A Wonderful Life? Was that during that period? I don't know.
Uh,
If
I got to
anybody's
be,
seen that movie,
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
period where they all come and they
right,
want their money back.
right, right. So what happened was the banks created something called a bank holiday. It's a brilliant piece of economics. They introduced something called a bank holiday. And what the bank holiday did was it allowed the banks to close their doors so the public weren't allowed in until they thought it was okay to open them again. So now let's think for a minute about the economy at the moment. And again, I pay very close attention to things. I think that what we're experiencing right now is very similar to the events that occurred in 2007, 2006, 2007. And I truly believe we're going to see a market collapse. I really believe this, and I can tell you why in a minute. But during a market collapse, the first thing that ensues is general panic. And of course, there's a run on the banks. This is why in 2008, Obama had to bail the banks out of trouble because they didn't have enough money. And basically, he said to them, I'll do it, but it's a one time and a one time only. So let's go back to the state of the stock market.
And now we're here and it's going to be worse.
Well, let me tell you why I know this. It's not because I'm a genius or I'm some sort of prophet. Have you heard of a gentleman called Warren Buffett?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm hoping you touch on the stuff he says when markets go crazy.
Well, that's interesting because that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Good.
So Warren Buffett has one famous saying that most people know, or they bastardize it and give their own slant. But essentially, Buffett says, "I get into the market when everybody gets out, and when everybody gets in, no, the other way. When everybody gets out of the market, I get into the market."
Yep.
So that's what Buffett says. And if you don't know Warren Buffett or you've never studied him, you think, oh, he's a nice old guy who maybe has, a sense of what's going on. No, Warren Buffett is nothing like that. In fact, he's probably one of the top 3 mathematicians in the entire country. So he shouldn't be frowned on by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
So some time ago, Warren Buffett created something called the Buffett indicator. This is something you can teach your kids, by the way. So the Buffett indicator measures the power of the stock market against the country's GDP. That's what it does.
Okay.
And it works on a scale of 0 to 100. The higher up that scale, the more danger that we're in. So if it goes above 100, which it can do, that means the market is hugely overvalued. Think of it like a thermometer. So typically, if you want to get into the market, the Buffett indicator should be around about the 50, 60 mark. If you want to get out the market, if it gets to 90, 95, you're in danger. It's time to get out.
Yeah.
In 2008, the Buffett indicator measured 105, 5 points above the 100. And as a result of that, the majority of Americans in the stock market lost over 40% of their savings. Okay? Have a guess what the Buffett indicator is right now.
120, 125.
That would be nice. It's actually 148.
I didn't want to go that high. I was going 120 thinking, like, hopefully I'm not that high.
So here's the thing. This is why I believe that when the market goes, it's going to make 2008 seem like a birthday. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. Stock market collapses, and forget the Buffett indicator for a minute. Amazon are laying off thousands of people. Sorry about that. Amazon are laying off thousands. Even Apple are having financial problems. Walmart has just laid off thousands of people. What is that telling you?
Yeah.
We're in the middle of Russia is still in the war with the Ukraine. God knows what China are going to do. And the world economy is in huge trouble. Europe is screwed. Thank God I'm not in Europe anymore. So if you look at it, things look bleak. So let me ask you a question. The market collapses. Everybody's losing money. What is the first thing that you would do? You'd go to the bank to get your money, correct? You would, big banks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of the phrase "too big to fail"?
Yes.
Have you heard of that? Okay. Do you know what that is? Because people say, "Oh yeah, I know too big to fail," but they don't have a clue what it is.
Basically, for me, too big to fail is the company is too entrenched in the movement of our economy that if they blow up, so many other things will fall.
Correct.
That we need to buffer them.
Which
is what happened with. Do you remember the whole there was a social thing. Someone got dragged out of an airplane and everyone was like, I'm never going to fly that airline again. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. Right. They went on they carry too many commerce. It's too big for our economy that an airline would just go down. It just won't happen.
I get it.
And then when they're bankrupt, you think that like, okay, we'll see you tried. Yeah. No, the government is going to give them more money because if they fail, so many other dominoes are going to fall.
Exactly. But in this respect, what we're talking about is financial organizations, nothing more.
Okay.
So too big to fail refers to the bank. If you get a chance after we finished, Google Credit Suisse or Swiss Credit.
Okay.
Okay. And see what sort of financial trouble they're in. So all these major banks, Wells Fargo went through a terrible period, apart from the fraud that they committed openly with all those accounts that never existed.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you that the banks are in trouble. Now, there's a bit of legislation flying around that you may not be aware of called the Dodd-Frank Act.
Heard of
Dodd-Frank.
it. Yeah.
Okay. So the way that the Dodd-Frank Act works is very simple. It was enacted, it was passed in 2010, and it refers to banking organizations. Because remember what I said, Obama bailed the banks out. He said it's a one-time only thing. We're not going to do it again. The Dodd-Frank Act, brought together by Dodd and Frank in 2010, said this, that if the banks are in a financial situation where it's a potential collapse, they can take your money, they can take my money, and they can use it however they feel free to do so. And the main reason behind this is that when you, and you probably don't know this either, when you put your money into a bank, you are now classed as a creditor of the bank, not a depositor, as you would think you are. Hey, I just put $10,000 in your bank. I'm a depositor. No, you're not. You're a creditor. So if we need to take that $10,000, sayonara, it's ours. That to me is very scary. So one of the biggest lessons I would teach my kids is not to put too much money in a bank and think of other resourceful places to put it. But that's why I believe there's going to be a run on the banks. And if everybody lines up to take the money out, there's no way in hell they can pay everybody out.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah,
now,
it's going to be a scary situation.
There's one more thing to compound all these issues, in that the present government is a firm believer in the digital dollar. Are you aware of this at all?
I'm aware of it. I'm fighting it.
Oh, there you go. Well, you know, Maxine Waters is leading the race to basically make your money digital. That scares the life out of me, because look at Bitcoin. It's there, it's gone. It's there, it's gone. One press of a button, one error can wipe out everything you've got.
We literally just have a whole, and if you're a conspiracy theorist or not, whether you are or not, we had FXT. Is it FXT? FTX?
FTX, yeah. Yeah.
Lose 40 billion of digital currency. And then our government's like, hey, you know what we should do? Digital currency.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Did we not just learn from last week? What are we doing?
But unless you lost millions of dollars, as some people did, I was reading that Mr. Wonderful from
Shark Tank.
He's lost something like 9 million or something. But anyway, unless you're really involved in it, people just blink and go, yeah, well, I probably knew that was going to happen. Let me get on with my day.
Yeah.
They don't pay any attention to the lessons. And that's why sit down with your kids and teach them. Teach them why, maybe you think Bitcoin or its derivatives are a wonderful thing, then teach them. If you think it's a bad thing and there are reasons to it, teach them. Let them know what's going on. Because a kid with information feels very important.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, dad shared this with me. I know all about Bitcoin. What do you know about it?
Yeah.
This is why, if we prepare our kids for what's going on, and you can teach them what the right way is and what the wrong way is, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
And, if you don't teach them, who the hell else is going to teach them?
Yeah. Because I mean, you can look back at yourself. Did you ever get that education in school? No. So why do you think today your kids are going to get that education in school? The only way they get it is at home. That's it.
That's true. That's very true. But we didn't have the distractions that the kids of today have, which is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
We go play out until it got too dark and blah, blah, blah. If our parents wanted us to sit down with them, then, we wouldn't argue about it. We just sit down. So it depends. How do your kids view time with daddy and mummy? Do they view it as, oh, my dad's really cool, he teaches me things all the time? Or, okay, I'm going to get another lecture from dad about money, And we don't listen to things we don't enjoy.
Yeah.
Do we? I have like 1,000 podcasts that I'll play like 2 minutes of and go, no, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
So it has to be done in a way that appeals to them, that they want to spend time with that.
Yeah.
And why my fishing buddy is so smart is he created a time and an event in which to do all these things.
Yeah.
So the kid knows, hey, I'm going with dad on a fishing boat. He's going to teach me about money today, or we talked about things. Give them something to look forward to, not, oh God, another lecture, and by them interacting, that's how you can do it. If it's
Yeah.
all you, blah, 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 then listen, I didn't like hearing that from my parents. The kids are no different today.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, no adult likes to be lectured.
No,
No
there
kid
you
likes to
go.
be lectured.
Yeah, that's
Same
true.
thing.
That's true.
I
But
have one last question, and I know
sure.
we're in a vacuum here. You got your crystal ball sitting in front of you.
Yeah, go
We've
on.
got a Buffett indicator of 140. We've got our government printing money. You said
Yep.
Europe is screwed. If there's anything we can do now, like what would we do now to correct or lessen the fall? Like the fall is inevitable. Is there
Well,
anything now that could lessen the burn
well,
that's about to happen?
if you're asking what assets I have personally to avoid all this, I have a contact in the gold industry. So I'm a firm believer in physical gold because for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a tangible asset that you can actually touch and
Yeah.
feel. So it can't be manipulated by the government. There are also huge tax benefits associated with it because it's a confidential asset. And I guess the biggest thing of all is that during an inflationary period, the major asset that goes up in value is gold.
Yeah.
Let me indicate what I mean. Going back to 2008, the Buffett indicator at 105, when the market collapsed, the Buffett indicator went down to 50. So we're talking about the beginning of 2008. If you bought gold in the beginning of 2008, by 2011, it had almost trebled in value.
Really?
Because during an inflationary period, it does crazy things. And also, not a lot of people know this, but you can actually put you've got two choices with gold. I sound like a gold salesman here, but you've got two choices. You can either, if you've got money in the bank and you're very concerned about what the banks are going to do, you can buy physical gold and it'll be delivered to your house. So you look after it. The other way of buying gold is by putting it in your IRA. So I don't know if you know this, but there are huge tax benefits associated with that. So if you're in the stock market and you're very concerned, you can translate that into physical gold. Now, the gold is held in a depository somewhere. You don't get to hold the gold in an IRA or a 401k. So it's held in a depository, but from there, you've got three different options. Option number one, you can keep it in there and watch it grow in value. Option number two, you can decide to take some of it out of the depository and have it delivered to your house. You can do that, but it is a taxable event because you're taking something physical out your IRA. Or number three, you can decide to sell some or all of it, even inside the IRA, and take a cash position. So just say you had $100,000 of gold, you could then buy, and you wanted to sell it, you could sell it for 100,000. Now you've got cash. The only thing is, remember what I said, cash is losing 1.6% spending power month on month. So you've got to look at what the alternatives are. And I'm a very conservative investor. I never touch Bitcoin. To me, it was too shady. I just, and again, those that have, great for you, but it just wasn't for me. I'm looking at other assets. The housing market, I'd stay well clear of, because the first thing that goes in a market collapse is the housing market. Yeah. So if I wanted to buy a house, and by the way, a house is a good investment, I'd probably wait about 9 months before I did that. I'd let the market go down, let house values go down, and buy at the bottom. If you start buying now, you're definitely buying at the peak.
Yeah.
So to me, physical gold makes sense. I mean, I do all my business with one particular gold dealer that I've known for 28 years. He's very trustworthy and he's very well educated. So I guess if any listener wants to know about gold, they can call me and I'll put them in touch with
Yeah.
my guy,
Yeah.
who's,
No, that's
who's a
good.
really,
And your answer with Bitcoin or crypto is exactly what mine is.
yeah.
There's been a lot of people that have won, and kudos to them. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't trust it. So to me, it's like Potawatomi. It's a
Well,
gamble.
well, the
It's like
thing
going to a
is,
casino, you throw in some money, you hopefully get it out. If you don't, hey, it was a fun game. But
okay,
I'm not taking that as an investment.
so I agree. And that's one reason why, and I know when I say this to people, people look at me as if I'm weird, but I have never, ever invested in the stock market, ever. And I never will, because I don't understand it. So have I got time to tell you a quick story to
Yeah,
illustrate
absolutely.
this? Okay. So my best friend in life is a stockbroker, and he's a very wealthy, very well educated stockbroker. And we hang out a lot. We very rarely talk about the market, and I don't talk about anything I do. We're just good buddies. So one day out of the blue, and I'm going back now, this must be about 7 or 8 years ago, he called me out of the blue and he said, Steve, I know you're not in the market, but do me a favor. Let me take your money and let me place it somewhere that I know is going to make big bucks. So I said to him, well, as much as I love you, brother, I don't know. What have you got in mind? So this is what he said. He said to me, what everybody doesn't know, this wasn't insider trading. He said, but what everybody doesn't know is that Dell, actually I'm speaking to you on a Dell
Yeah.
computer. Dell is, and they were going through a really, really difficult time, and they were losing money in the market, and everything looked really bad for them. And he said to me, I have a funny feeling that when Dell appoint the next CEO, this guy, I've forgotten his name, but he said this guy is going to produce one of the biggest turnarounds in economic history. And if you're holding Dell shares at that point, you'll be laughing all the way to the bank. And I've followed this CEO for his last 3 companies,
Yeah.
and he's produced miracles.
Really?
So I said to him, I don't know. I said, as much as I love you and I think you're great, I'm going to take a pass on this, but I want to hear exciting stories from you and other people who've invested in Dell and done really well. He said, okay, fair enough. And he never argued with me. So 6 months later, I was just following the market, and sure enough, Dell stock had gone up in value considerably.
Really?
And I'm sat there thinking, oh my God, why didn't I listen to him? Yeah. A week after this all happened, I turn on the news, and the big headline on the news is that the Dell CEO has been fired because of sexual harassment.
Oh,
After that, Dell stock went, yeah. Now,
jeez.
why am I telling you this story? Not because of the sexual harassment thing, but if the stock market worked on a fair basis, just on company's price, future prospects, business done, I'm in there. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, you think you're good, right? But it doesn't.
Yeah.
And there are so many external factors that have nothing to do with anything that can hugely affect the market, which hugely affects your money.
Right.
And I'm not an expert on every company, and it scares the crap out of me putting money blindly where it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
I might as well go to Vegas. Seriously.
Right.
So
I mean, and I dabble in the stock market, but it is just that. It's a dabble. It's a fun
right.
thing for me. I check it. My TD Ameritrades, now my big thing is converting everything to Charles Schwab, because Charles
All
Schwab just
right.
beat
Yeah.
TD Ameritrade.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I literally just buy some small stocks that I think will be fun to see what happens. And if I
Well,
win, I
that's
win. If
good.
I lose, I lose. I have no idea.
That's good.
That's not my
If it's
investment. That's my game.
I agree. If it's disposable income, great.
Yeah.
Have fun with it. Seriously, I agree with that 100%. But the problem is, very much like Bitcoin, people got greedy. people put everything. Oh, look at Bitcoin! It's going up! It's going up! Have you ever seen the South Park? It's like a clip where the little character. Well, I don't know what the little character's called. The main one, Cartman.
Okay.
Where Cartman goes to the bank. You'll see it on YouTube. Cartman goes into the bank to deposit all his money. So he gives the money to the bank manager, and the first thing the bank manager says, "Well, it's gone." The Cartman went, "Well, what do you mean it's gone? I just gave you." Yeah,
I do remember that one.
It's gone.
And it's gone.
There you go. Same thing. I don't expect to make money off everything I do.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that I'm covered either way. And why I like gold so much is that, and I've got to be clear, first of all, I'm not talking about gold ETFs. I'm not talking about any paper gold or any paper silver. Because those are
like crypto to me.
Right, exactly, same thing. But the reason why I like it is it has a time frame for a return. So is gold always the best thing to buy? No, it's not. But given the state of the economy at the moment, if I wanted to make a good profit within a 2.5 to 3 year time frame, there's nothing like that out there.
Yeah.
And also, again, I'm beginning to sound like a gold salesman. Maybe I should start selling it. But the big deal is that central banks around the world right now are buying more gold than ever before.
Yeah.
So the question remains, what do they know that we don't?
Yeah.
That's why when I think of assets, I think of conservative assets. When someone says, hey, you can, 16 times your money if you just do this, no, thank you. I'm not even going to take the chance.
That, honestly, when you just said that, was like, that's a Potawatomi commercial. Potawatomi is the local casino-ish in our area.
Oh, it is?
That's
really?
A casino commercial. Win big.
Right. You're right. Right.
2 hours of work and you'll win big. Like,
there you go.
Casino. All that stuff is just straight up casino to me. I got nothing. And there's obviously more credibility to it, but to me, it's the same.
Well, it's a crapshoot.
There's going to be an EFT game in one of the casinos here pretty soon.
Of course.
Sure.
Of course.
And I do, when EFTs came out, I really did like the concept of it because I got it explained by Mr. Wonderful. You brought him up. He said that the EFTs he likes are the ones that are tied to a tangible asset.
Oh, there you go.
He went EFTs. He's big into watches. He loves watches.
Yeah, right. Me too.
He'll buy EFTs for pretty much a certification that his watch is real. Wow. So it's tied to something tangible. Okay. And then it got explained to me like, do you know the Green Bay Packers here in Green Bay?
Of course.
Okay. So we've got our season ticket holder.
Hold on one sec. Who's the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers?
Aaron Rodgers still.
Okay. And what football team does he support? Do you know? What soccer team does he support? Check it out. Manchester City. He's a huge Manchester City fan. Yeah, he is.
I did not know that.
Yes, he is. Check it out. You can Google that shit.
I'm going to. There's been a couple people in the U.S. that have bought teams over there. And I don't know what level they're at, because one thing I love is the relegation. I love relegation. If the NFL could bring in relegation, oh my God.
Yeah.
The NBA wouldn't tank anymore. That would be great. Full competition. I love it.
Well, they can't do that because there's too much money invested.
I know.
And the thing about English soccer is if your team is relegated from the Premier League, your income is literally cut by 50, 60%.
Yep.
So that's why owners are not in favor of relegation. But they came up with this smart idea. I love this idea of like, if your team finishes bottom, you get the first choice draft, correct?
Yeah.
Is that right? So there was an argument recently between a couple of teams arguing that they were both trying to lose. Yeah. So they got the first draft pick.
Yep.
Which I think is really funny.
I think it's great. And there's so many teams that just towards the end of the year, we're not going to make the playoffs. So we'll put in our secondaries and then we'll get a better chance for the top pick. Right. If we had a relegation where you just dropped out of the league, if you just gave up, talk about capitalism and talk about competition. That's where it's at. That's true. I lost my train of thought with it.
By the way, actually, you've hit on another subject in that if you go to a football match or an NFL match or whatever, and you happen to take your son or your daughter, that's daddy time.
Yep.
And during daddy time is a great way of talking to them about small things.
Mhm.
You know, it's about picking your moment, I think.
Yeah.
Does that make sense
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah. Where there's learning moments, make sure you capitalize on them.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Oh, it was the EFT with the season ticket holders. So Green Bay has a long, you could apply to be a season ticket holder when you're 10 and you don't get it until you're 60. Like there's just
Wow.
a long gap because
Right.
it goes by when you submit your ticket to get in.
Jeez.
And they were
Okay.
saying if you could have an NF or an EFT, NFT, NFT.
NFT, I think it is. Yeah. An
So
NFT.
if you have one that is tied to your season ticket and you're like, okay, I'm done being a Green Bay Packer season ticket holder. I'm gonna
Right.
sell it for twenty
Oh, that's
thousand
cool.
dollars. Someone
You
at
can
the
do that.
end of the list could buy that for 20,000. And I
That's
thought
awesome.
that is a great way to pull the power back to people
It
and
is.
not
That is a
have it
great
in the
way.
organization. But would they ever allow that? No.
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 Why?
Why would they get rid of their power?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Even though
You're
it
right.
makes sense to everybody,
You're
the
right.
big guys don't
Yeah.
like it. So I don't see it ever happening.
Interesting.
But
Interesting.
if that ever happens, count me in. But right now it's golden monkeys that gets you onto like yacht parties
Right.
and things that I
It's
don't really.
it's so funny that you say that because my brother in England deals with NFTs and he's a power broker for luxury yachts.
Oh,
Funnily enough,
really?
and the two go hand in hand. Yeah, and he's it's funny because he's tried to explain to me multiple times on what he does, but he completely loses me. I'm just
Yeah.
well, okay.
Some people are winning at it and keep going,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I've never been to a casino either, so we'll leave it there.
I'm just thinking, I have, but not to gamble. So I've usually been there because there are events in Vegas that I'm either
Yeah.
speaking at or going to. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So what do you think we should, if we wrap this up now, what lesson do you think that we should teach our kids about finance? What's the takeaway from this? I would ask you.
For me,
Yeah.
I think anything. I don't think there's enough. Just if you can, like you were saying, you take those normal day-to-day scenarios and
Right.
when they're having fun, just inject a little bit of knowledge, just a teeny bit, and leave them with a cliffhanger because it's gonna sit with them
Yeah.
and they're gonna go and they're gonna try to figure out why did they not complete that sentence? Why did they not answer that thought? And they're gonna go out and
Right.
try to find it. And
Right.
I think just getting to start the pathways of their brain clicking in that way. And it's super small. I don't think it's anything. You don't have to like change your routine or do
Right.
anything
Yeah.
different.
I
Just
agree.
don't be scared to interject the things that you want to interject to your kids. You're not forming their thoughts. You're just giving them a little bit of information.
I agree. I agree totally. I just, the only point that I would add is that timing to me is everything.
Mhm.
So if you get the timing wrong, the lesson is lost and nothing is learned. If they don't want to talk or they've had a bad day at school, I'm not going to risk broaching that at all. But I want my kids to be as excited to sit with me and learn stuff as if they were going to say, "Hey, Dad, can I have a driving lesson? I want to learn how to drive." Think about how
Yeah.
when you got that, how excited you're getting in the
Oh yeah.
car. That sort of level of excitement, which is not easy to achieve, but it's a way that you approach your kid. And as I said, if it's a lecture, nobody likes lectures. You've
Yeah.
got to make it interactive. That would be my message for today.
Yeah. And there's so many resources out there now that make it fun.
That's
Like we
true.
didn't have the green light card that I'm gonna get for my son
Right.
when I was
That's
younger
cool.
that has
Right.
like so he's gonna get a tablet for his birthday or for Christmas.
Cool.
He's getting it because he's getting this like basketball dribbling thing. It's gonna help him dribble. But that
Cool.
green light thing also has an app that has things that he can read. So he's working on his reading, and it's
Awesome.
about things that you can do with your card.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm like, okay, perfect. That's a great birthday. I'm giving him money for his
Right.
birthday, but he doesn't know that I'm giving him education. I'm pretty much buying him a book for his
Smart. That's
birthday.
very smart. That's very smart.
So
But the thing is, you can't want it more than they do. That's
know.
when,
And that's tough as a parent.
of course it is. And that's the toughest thing of all. But if you want it and they don't, it's going nowhere.
Yeah.
You've got to find a way of interacting with them and making it fun and interesting, and also a learning experience, which, if I think back to my school days, my favorite subject was history. Imagine Russian history. So that's saying something.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, Catherine the Great, Peter the Great. But I loved it because my teacher was such a great dude. He made the lessons so interesting and so much fun, and had us talking and had us thinking. That's what kids love. They want to be involved in the process. If it's just you sitting down lecturing them, it's going to go above the head.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Then we just got to somehow make finances fun again, because I think some of the adults are beaten down by it, and they're like, this sucks.
Well, all the things that we've known growing up are now not true.
Yeah.
As I said, like the bank is the safest place to put your money. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah. And now you talk about parents who think like talking about finances and everything financially is poison. Why would I interject poison to my kid? And you're like, oh, it's not that way though.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But we are still, if you think about it, most of the things that you've done, that I've done, have probably come via our parents, because our parents did that.
Yeah.
But times have changed.
Yeah.
The economy has changed. Structures have changed. So the question is, what have they got to do differently to what we're doing right now?
Yeah.
And the minute that you've got it as a parent is when your kid says to you, sit down, Dad or Mum, I've got something to tell you about the economy or finances or the bank. Then you've got them. That's the magic point. Because they want to share that knowledge. If they think they're teaching you something, that makes them godlike, to be honest with you. They love that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's a fun moment. It is a fun moment. That's the victory parade as a parent, the small victory parade.
You got it.
Good luck to everybody out there that is going to start talking to their kids about finances. Wait for the parades, because they're coming. They will be there.
You got it. You got it. Well, I've enjoyed today. Have you enjoyed it?
Oh, absolutely. I always enjoy talking to you. And
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
We are going to have you back.
Okay.
Hopefully after our Buffett indicator is in a
check it out.
reasonable way.
Check it out.
Hopefully the crash isn't that bad, but we will be talking again, because obviously having somebody that's in this and focuses on it every day is very important for our audience.
I do.
We will keep in track. I'm actually reading a couple finance books right now, so maybe I will be a little bit more educated next time we talk.
I think you're pretty smart. What are you reading, just out of interest, Marcus?
Right now it's Creative Cash. It's a book I got from a guest that I got 2 shows ago about creative financing. So it goes into a lot of the little things about banking that I don't know. So I'm learning.
There you go. That's cool.
It was a super cool book. So shout out to him. So thank you for sending me the book. But yeah, I'm only a couple pages in, because I've finished a book and I'm jumping into that one. I cannot put down a book if I haven't finished it.
Yeah, I'm the same.
But we will talk again. I know we went a little bit over our time today.
Yep, we did. But it's been fun.
We had some soccer to watch, and there was other things.
There you go.
We will have you on again.
All right.
If anybody does have questions, obviously they can get a hold of you. We'll put your contact in the show notes as well.
Okay.
But enjoy your warm weather. We'll enjoy our snow.
You, man. Thanks, man.
Have a good day.
Give my best to your son as well.
Will do.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.